Well, hello there, traders and investors. I'm Ellie Little, and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. Take a look at these markets. We're doing it from a neoclassical perspective. That means we're looking at supply and demand on the charts. We're using that along with the neoclassical concepts that I created about a decade ago to determine which way this market wants to go. And if you tuned in last night, this market's been nothing but up for 3 weeks. Last night we finally got a signal that we were going to get a retrace. I broke that news here, told you that's what we would probably see today. Sure enough, that's what we got. I do this show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday, broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time. It's archived on YouTube and under the channel, Ellie Little. If you want to subscribe to the show, just reach out up in the right-hand corner, hit that button, subscribe. Anytime I push public content, you'll get a notification. As far as what happened to these markets, let's take a look at the numbers. And what we see here is a lot of red. Another 1.25% down on the bonds. Those bonds just can't find a buyer. We're down, actually we got a big pop right at the bell. We were down about 1% on the Russell, ended up down 0.65. The one that was taking it on the chin today was the Nasdaq, the NDX. NDX down 1.6%, 1.4 roughly, 1.36 actually on the Nasdaq. Those were the ones taking it. Dow actually ends up. The S&P ends down about 1/3. You have huge divergence out here. Financials, transports, industrials. What's the other one? Energy. Those are the ones that are trying to lead on the way up. What's dragging? It's all those tech stocks. And today it was the stocks got thrown in there and just got whooped. And that was what put the big pressure on the Nasdaq, the NDX. Overseas, you got some rise, a little bit of rise over in Asia last night, and a decent sell-off here in Europe. Let's take a look at these markets. Let's see what we got here. Starting here with the S&P 500. So last night, we talked about the fact that we were probably going to push down. We didn't get that big a push here. We're trying to get back into this bar. That's the November 10th high is 2182. That also kind of lines up inside this swing point high. Remember when we were talking about some of the concepts, and what we try to do here at NeoTA or at TA today is we try to teach the neoclassical concepts, right? And not so much try, we do teach it. I mean, that is our objective. We want people to learn how to fish, not be fed. 6 bars, if you get over 6 bars after you cross a swing point high, and this was a breakout on that, when you do that, right, and you come back, you're almost certainly going to see that thing bought as it comes back. We're not that far away now. As this thing grinds back down into this high volume price point, we're pushing decent volume, not as much. As we get there, if that volume dries up, which is kind of what I expect it's going to do, you're going to see this thing flip around, and then it's going to try to do an ABC structure to the upside. If you look and ask yourself what might that look like, right, that ABCD structure is a huge one. Let's assume it comes all the way down to here. That's still off the charts, right? So it's not, it's hard to believe you can get that kind of a move. But folks, I've been around long enough to know that you can. We're talking about 100 points, right? Or actually, you're talking about 120, but your pullback's it's about 100 points. So 100 points from here take you to 2283. Now, that's on a daily time frame. That's kind of hard to fathom. I don't know that we're going to see that. But I do know that more than likely you're going to see buyers as this thing comes back. Right now, there's nothing here giving you any kind of indication that you're going to turn. What's giving us an indication is where we are and the probabilities that we know that exist, right, as we come back into this area. And so we're expecting that as we come back right into there, that's where we're going to find buyers. If I look at the Russell next, that's the strongest index out there. The Russell's doing the same sort of thing. You're coming back into these bars. Now, the ones you're actually coming into on the Russell Because the Russell, unlike the others, it had the big spikes up, but then it just continued spiking, right? The Russell went up like 16, 17 days in a row. As it comes back, it has farther to go. Where's it trying to get into? It's trying to get into that bar. It almost got there today. The top, 1306.56, 1308.85. You can get into that. You might even get back into this if things really sell down farther than I expect. But that's the Russell as it comes back. It's nowhere near a swing point high. You can pull over the weekly chart and see that. You know, we use 60 bars, 3 charts simultaneously. That gives us a nice big clean picture of what's taking place here. And so as you see this thing come back, you're essentially on the weekly doing a takeaway bar. And it suggests that, you know, if we end down here tomorrow, and we do have the employment numbers tomorrow, if we do end, and actually Italy, the referendum on Sunday, if we end down here, that's going to be a takeaway bar. Says that we could get a little bit larger pullback on the Russell. So that's the Russell coming back. Again, going to set up an ABCD structure at some point. It's just a question of where and how, right? And so we look for those places where we know the buyers are going to be sitting and waiting to try and buy. NDX now, the NDX is the weak link. This thing comes down. You know, last night I talked about this area here as the target. They got into that. It's got farther to go if it wants to go to the bottom. That's where all the volume is, those 2 bars. Coming back into it again, not as much volume. If the volume shrinks, you come into this, you're going to see this thing flip around. Nasdaq, same sort of thing, except for the Nasdaq's not quite as weak as the NDX. Just had a 2.5% pullback on the NDX, about the same on the Nasdaq. Again, volume not as heavy. You didn't hold your swing point highs here. Got over them, didn't hold them. And so when you don't do that, right, that tells you something. Neoclassical is all about what is the market telling you. That's the education piece you have to learn. It's telling you that what was this way isn't anymore. It's more likely like this. It tells us we're going to get some consolidation in this index on this time frame. And so that's the Nasdaq. So in other words, you're still going to want to sell some of your pops higher because we're going to consolidate a little bit longer than we previously thought. So that's the indexes. If we look at the sectors, we have pretty much the same story. You have some of these that just got whacked. Let's look at the stocks because this one took back the entire move higher. Comes off with volume in a huge wide price spread bar. And just like I said on the NDX, here this is telling you in a different way that you're going to consolidate. So anyway, that's that one. XLK, you can imagine that one got beat up as well. Down 1.19, down 2, so all 2.25% here as well, coming into those big bars. Looks almost like the NDX. Elsewhere, there's not a lot else to talk about here. I mean, you've got the strength in energy, although the energy went over and under, so that suggests that it's going to try and pull back some tomorrow. So if you're trying to snap up some energy stocks, look for some better prices probably tomorrow. Financials, a totally different story. This is the big rotation. These are nowhere near their highs. I mean, most things have already hit all-time highs in terms of sectors. This one still has a long way to go. As this thing pushes up, you know, it's got the big burst, a little bit of consolidation with a positive bias, and now the second leg higher. This is what's keeping the S&P from coming in hard. I had a question that one of the members wrote me today, and I'm just going to kind of open it up for everyone. And that is about the Italian referendum. The question is, you know, what are they going to do here? Is there any way to game this thing, right? And if you're into that sort of thing, I mean, I don't try to game individual things as much as to just be situated either, you know, if I think there's going to be risk, then I try to take some risk off in front of it. If I don't, I just try to ignore it. And I think this is one of those that you just want to try and ignore. And so when I look at it, and I'll show you why, here's the EWI. Now the EWI has sold off quite a bit. I'm going to pull over the weekly chart for you. The EWI has sold off. Matter of fact, let's bring over the monthly and you can see the whole year you can see this big decline for the last year and a half, right? So you went from 31, pull this out a little bit, went from 30, almost 32, 33, down as low as 19 and a half. All right, it's a pretty big clip. So when you pull the weekly over and you look at the last year, you're down 20% on the year. But what's it doing now in front of the news? It's rallying. It's coming off those lows. And just like we were just talking about a retest regen on the bullish side that didn't hold, here's one on the bearish side that didn't hold. And not only did it not hold the one, there was 3 of them there. And it blew through all 3 of them. So what it's telling you is that what was in effect this way isn't anymore. You're probably this way at worst, maybe potentially trying to change it. And so when I see something like that in front of the news, either people are really anxious of front running this, right, or they've already priced it in. And so if they've priced it in, I don't see a big reason to be trying to game this thing to the downside. It's not just here, though. I mean, there are other things telling you the same or giving you the same message. For example, I mean, this is all about the banking sector there. EUFN had sold off. Now, this has a nice uptrend, and this is the banking sector in the European markets. You can see the trend has been up. It's been doing ABCDs kind of to the upside, does another pullback, and here it goes again trying to do another ABCD to the top side. Now, whether it actually does it, gets over, the resistance that exists up there on the weekly, which you can see on the weekly chart here, if it gets over that, right, then something really cooking. But what's interesting to me is just like the EWI, this thing is pushing higher in front of the news, not lower. FXE, another story. FXE is sold off, right? What is it doing? Pushing higher on some volume coming in. FXE, in other words, the euro, is not selling off farther in front of that news. So all these things tell me that more than likely whatever's going to happen is not going to take these markets down. And so I wouldn't be trying to trade it that way if I were you. I'm going to finish up the show here tonight with a couple more thoughts. And that is that when you see something like the stocks selling off, what you want to go do is find the strong stocks. And I've got a mentor up in New York, a lady that I did some mentoring with over the last 6 months or so. She's in the group. We get together every morning. And we were talking about, or she's been banging the table on this stock. And so what you're seeing is weakness in Nvidia, right, which has been an extremely strong stock. I'll just pull over the weekly to give you a glimpse of it. You can see how strong this thing has been. Look at the volume come into this. As this thing pulls back, this is one of the few areas you can think about trying to take a position. Now, it pulled back tonight, and let's neoclassically examine it. It pulled back tonight into the big bar on the way up, and it stayed in it. When you see that, that says it's going to try to get deeper. It got about a third of the way in, so you got a third of the way in and held it, right? The other third is down here. As long as it can hold this part, you'll probably get the bounce from here. But if it gets a little bit deeper and closes down into here, then expect the bottom of the bar. That would be a sweet buy down in that area. Nvidia, something to put on your radar for the coming days as the SOX tries and bring everything down with it. Tomorrow, employment numbers. Of course, I'm off on Friday. I do this show 4 times a week, not 5, not 6, not 7. Got to have a day off somewhere. That's the picture set up. It looks to me like you're going to see probably a little more pressure sometime tomorrow. I wouldn't be surprised if it's in the morning, but you're probably going to see this market flip around pretty soon and try to work back the other way. Thanks for joining me. Have yourself a great one, and I'll see you next week. Good night.